speaking of preventive measures, Ruto might have set the ball rolling for the kind of protest that we'll see across the continent. In our next story coming from the Financial Times, it says how a bunch of nobodies left Kenya's political class running scared. And the story is submitted by Rulef Khalef, editor of the FT, who selects her favorite stories in this weekly newsletter. Facing a sudden outbreak of protest in Kenya a month ago, President William Ruto offered the angry young demonstrators a major concession. He withdrew a tax bill that aimed to raise over $2.3 billion. Almost 6 weeks into the Leaderless online organized mass movement, Kenyan Somalian activist, 28-year-old Hanifa Adan said, everyone is just asking for accountability from their leaders. A bunch of nobodies giving them a run, and then not finding anyone they could put their hands on is what drives them crazy. It must be said that more than 50 people have died and scores have been arrested after the initial peaceful protest took a darker turn when demonstrators stormed the parliament on June 25 and police began firing tear gas and live rounds. In another concession, Ruto on Wednesday, obviously listening to this program, has nominated 4 opposition figures to a broad-based cabinet that did not certify them. Zakayo has appointed corrupt people to fight corruption, wrote activist Boniface Wangi on X, referring to the biblical tax collector Zacchaeus, whose Swahili name has become the protesters' preferred nickname for Ruto. In Kenya, political dynasties have long played the ethnic card, which has often led to deadly violence and roped in the opposition into their governments when things turned difficult. The old template used by former President Daniel Moi Kibaki, and Uhuru Kenyatta must be shredded and forgotten, read a Star newspaper editorial. Zoomers have demonstrated that business as usual will not wash. Nwagi Maina, a Nairobi-based 28-year-old political commentator, said, we have a very awake and very educated young population, which have come to terms with the fact that the political elite has always divided Kenyans along tribal lines and resource sharing. Your take, sir.
Okay, very good. Yes, I think we discussed this previously, how unique this form of protest is. In the past, you would get press releases from organizations that are planning the protest, the demonstration, or the march, and it would be easy to swoop down and apprehend these organizers or planners. And then it's dead, it's gone.
True.
And sometimes there's a reluctance to join protest that is associated with a particular individual or organization. You see?
Yep.
So that obstacle is now eliminated. It's a protest that belongs to everyone.
To the people. Yeah.
Everyone is an organizer. Everyone is a leader in some capacity. Obviously, some are better in mobilizing and have larger social media following, but they may not even be necessarily involved in the conceptualizing process. They may just say that, oh, I like what people are talking about, and I will promote it on my personal space because I have this large following. So everyone is contributing in their own way. Whether you have a large social media following, whether you have a small one, you identify with the cause because the cause affects everybody.
Yep.
In terms of the potential for the price, the cost of essential goods and commodities to escalate had that tax bill gone forward,
Gone through. Yeah.
and had it become the law of the land, and had it been implemented.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see why something like this can be so attractive. All of us identify with the cause. If we are sitting there in Kenya and it's not associated with Mr. A or Mr. B or Mr. C or whatever part of the country he comes from, ethnic part of the country comes from, religious part or political party. And that
Mm-hmm.
is why this is really tremendously powerful. And I don't think that its potential has been fully tapped. It's going to now significantly play a role in African elections as well, going forward,
Oh, okay.
and the aftermath of elections going forward. Now people know they can mobilize. They know that if somebody steals an election, and of course, in countries like Uganda, you can see how significant this is going to be as the country heads into elections 2 years from now,
Okay.
which, the guys succeeded in stealing the last 6 elections. Now, let's say the aftermath of another stolen election, everybody has a stake in that.
Mm.
It doesn't mean that the party that was the second biggest party or the biggest party that actually won and was deprived by the incumbent just refusing to yield power.
Mm.
All the entities that participated in the election process can now join together in collective protest and collective outrage, you see?
Yeah.
So I think the potential power of this type of organizing has yet to be realized.
True.
We are
Mm.
only skimming the tip of the iceberg right now.
Okay. I think you might be onto something. And the reason I say that is at the tail end it says the unrest appears to be spreading to other countries. This week, young protesters were arrested in Uganda for defying aging President Yoweri Museveni in an anti-corruption rally. In Nigeria, social media calls have mushroomed for protest against President Bola Tinubu next week, which is this week, fueled by discontent with poor governance and high living cost. So they might be on, you might be onto something.
Absolutely. What was not mentioned that, in fact, many of the people who were arrested, some of them were tortured and some were also raped, including
Oh.
the men and women, students. And that is widely being reported in Ugandan media. And it's a shame that many of the international media is not touching on that story. The guy is really diabolical. But even then, these protesters still organize additional protests after that and plan to continue doing so. So if he's trying to use that as a weapon of intimidation, I see it actually backfiring and galvanizing more people to want to come over and denounce these types of atrocities.
Well, we continue to monitor the situation, and hopefully, the people. I mean, the concept behind government by the people for the people of the people is that the people's needs are met by the government, and one form
Absolutely. I
of
mean, and what I like is the potential of collaboration here. I joined a discussion on X Space,
okay.
formerly Twitter, of Kenyans yesterday. And I made my contribution by obviously texting in my comments and suggestions. And I like the fact that even the host was responding to my comments as their conversation was going. And at one point, there were about maybe 120 people. These are all smart people contributing their ideas and their critiques and the kind of Kenya that they want. And of course, I was also emphasizing that they should collaborate with young people in Uganda and in other African countries, because it's not so much the Kenya that you want, it's the kind of Africa
Right.
that we
Yeah.
all deserve.
True.
You know,
True.
why should we have all the natural resources and admire countries that emerged in more recent years, right?
Mm.
Countries like Singapore, South Korea, all those countries. Of course, they're beneficiaries of significant U.S. Capital for propaganda purposes. But we can also develop using the resources that we have. But we
Yeah.
have to have leaders that are nationalistic, love their people, not just their family and their own bank account, but are nationalistic, the kind of nationalism that the Nkrumahs had, the Julius Nyerere's had, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Determined to develop their people and their country. And the
Mm.
young people of today, they now see an opportunity that they can actually become a part of governing. And that was part of the conversation in the Kenyan space. Some of the older contributors were suggesting that. They were saying you should start looking beyond these
Colonial borders.
leaderless protests that you're organizing. You
Mm-hmm.
should
Mm-hmm.
organize these leaderless protests in order for you to become the leaders of the country. And I like that, you
Wow.
know?
Hmm. I mean, we now have international platforms like this in the X Spaces, formerly known as Twitter, Facebook, Zoom. I mean, it's an organic thing. The fact that conversations are being had across borders. You don't have to be physically. One of the positive things that came out of the pandemic was the fact that most of these conversations now are happening all over the internet, and it
Absolutely.
can be policed.
Absolutely.
Which
All you have
is
to do is see the topic of some space conversation going on
and
and
just
join. I saw the
join. Yeah.
Kenyan one and I joined. If I
Mm.
see one on Nigeria discussing the proposed protest for next week, of course I'm going to join and
Yeah.
listen in
So
and
mhm.
contribute also by texting in.
Yes.
We live in
And
very exciting times, really.
yeah. I mean, one of the uh things that was left out of the bag was the social media since 2005, and it's just taking on its own life like wildfire, and the normal traditional way of policing things is completely lost, and it's now time that the people actually give their voice power,
Right,
because all
right.
of these
And the other
conversations.
point
Yeah.
is this,
Yeah.
comrade. Any new leader now
Mm-hmm.
realizes how vulnerable they are,
Mm. Mm.
correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Meaning they have more incentive to pay attention to the aspirations and the
Of the people.
demands of their people. Otherwise, the people will mobilize and organize effectively
Mm.
against them. In the past,
Mm.
they did not mind. I can ignore you because you cannot mobilize effectively against me.
Mm.
I will bring out the police forces, but they can stay step ahead of you by saying, this is where we're going to congregate, not where the
Mm.
police are going to be. And you
Mm.
cannot preempt something like that. You see, when
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody becomes an organizer, it's almost like, remember what the Algerians had during the War of National Liberation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was a bit crude compared to what we now have, the possibilities. But they had a system where only they organized in groups of 3. So as a member of the FNLA, I could recruit 2 more members. So I would know
Mm.
myself and 2 more
And
members.
2 more members, and no
And those
more
2
than
members that are recruited, each one of them will
will
recruit 2 more.
2 more. Yeah.
So you have a built-in network, but assuming I am arrested, first
Mm.
I'm not supposed to no matter what kind of torture I endure, at least hold on for 24 hours. And then, no matter how much they torture me, I can only betray 2 people maximum, you see? Because that's all I know, you see? And they kept it deliberate like that. They can torture me till kingdom come. I cannot give them 100 names because I don't know
There's
100
only
people.
two.
I only know the 2 whom I recruited, you see? Now, we have that reversed, right? Now the network is, boom. I don't
Exponential.
have to know them. I declare my presence on some space, and then people are congregating toward the idea that is being shared.